Welcome to the second hour of Morning News. I'm Denise Dillon.
And I'm Miles O'Brien. An extra piece of in-flight safety equipment is coming to planes of one American air carrier. American
Airlines announces today some of its international flights will soon have defibrillators on board. They're those electric shock paddles that can revive heart attack victims. CNN's Greg Lefebvre reports.
Deliver shock now.
That voice and that machine are about to address one of the unspoken fears of flying. The fear someone on board may suffer a heart attack and die before getting help. The Forerunner, an automatic emergency heart defibrillator, will soon appear on the transoceanic fleets of American Airlines. Defibrillators send an electrical current through the chest and get a stopped heart beating again.
The value primarily is that it would save lives of people. It also gives our flight attendants the ability to feel confident about their response to an in-flight medical emergency.
About every other day, someone suffers a heart attack and dies aboard a United States airliner. So why not install these things before? They were big, expensive, and hard to use. Now, just last week, a Seattle company won federal approval for an automatic defibrillator no bigger than a telephone book. It costs about $4,000, a fraction of the old models, sports just 2 buttons.
Apply pads to patient's bare chest.
And delivers instructions someone even in a panicky situation can follow.
Plug in pad's connector next to flashing light.
Computer software within the machine reads the heartbeat, if there is one, and calculates the size of the jolt needed.
Press the orange button now.
Once you put the pads on the patient, the device automatically analyzes the patient's heart rhythm and determines, and the analysis takes 4.5 seconds, whether the patient's in a shockable rhythm, whether they require a shock or not.
Right now, if a passenger has a heart attack on board, a pilot can only rush to the nearest airport, while flight crews render cardiopulmonary resuscitation. But experts say that's good for little more than 10 minutes, and it takes about 20 minutes minimum to bring a plane down.
Given the givens, the fact that this is all going to occur at 30,000 feet and that there's no other alternative, I think it's very acceptable and in some instances maybe life-saving.
American Airlines, the first U.S. carrier to do so, will buy about 300.
No shock advised. It is safe to touch the patient.
But what if the machine fails to revive? Said one doctor, with this, at least we've tried. Greg Lefebvre, CNN, San Francisco.
Well, on the subject of health, lifestyle can make a world of difference in whether or not you get terminal cancer. The Harvard School of Public Health study finding 65% of cancer deaths caused by things people can't control. An estimated 30% of the deaths are caused by tobacco, 30% by diet and obesity, 5% caused by a lack of exercise. The study also traced only 2% of cancer deaths to environmental pollution, far less than the public's perceived risk.
Federal hearings have resumed this morning in Miami into the crash of Value Jet Flight 592. Yesterday, the
a heart attack victim back to life. The American Heart Association says the devices will give heart attack victims on board American flights a better chance of survival.
The defense is up to bat now in the trial of former Dallas School Board member Dan Peavy. Prosecutors rested their case just before noon.
Airlines is leading the way. Newly approved onboard defibrillators will soon be installed on many aircraft. These are the machines that shock the heart into pumping again. 11 News reporter Robbie Chavez is in our Dallas newsroom tonight with more on how the defibrillators will work.
Pretty hard to say, Cameron. American will purchase 300 of the defibrillators and have them on its overwater aircraft by spring of next year. That means 2,300 flight attendants who are in charge of cabin crews will have to undergo training. Tonight, the question is, can they operate them?
American Airlines showed off the high-tech machines in Washington. They will be installed by the spring of '97 in flights crossing the oceans, including all wide-body and many of its narrow-body planes. The benefits are said to be immeasurable.
We hope this is only the beginning. We hope that these defibrillators become as common as fire extinguishers, because wherever there are public places, that's where sudden cardiac arrest can occur.
Here's how a heart defibrillator works. During cardiac arrest, the electrical signals that tell the heart to pump go haywire and the heart stops. The portable units will deliver electrical currents to the heart, and the bolt of energy shocks the heart into beating again. It comes with the endorsement of the American Heart Association and is expected to free up millions for travel.
There's nothing worse than not being able to help your passenger. And it makes me so proud that we're the first U.S. airline to provide this service. And if it saves one life, it's well worth it.
Deliver shock now.
Americans say the attendants will be trained, but the sophisticated equipment is designed to guide the attendant through the process with voice prompts. It will decide when an electrical shock is necessary. Each second is critical.
Definitive treatment is defibrillation, and defibrillation within the first minute really enhances survival. We think by having defibrillators on board, we'll get a very high survival rate because we'll be able to respond instantly.
The new heart-saving machines will be installed on 40% of American Airlines' fleet.
Now, on top of that, American will add prescription medicines for cardiac arrest patients and a host of other ailments, along with breathing devices in its onboard medical kit. So some upgrades there.
What about the cost of all of this, Robbie?
Well, Cameron, American doesn't expect it to affect airline ticket prices much. Each of the 4-pound devices, costs $3,000. It'll cost American $300,000 for the battery-operated devices.
All right, Robbie Chavez, interesting. Thanks.
Experience sudden cardiac arrest.
And Channel 8's medical reporter Sonia Van Sickle is here now with details. Sonia?
Well, Gloria and Chip, sudden cardiac arrest, also referred to as sudden cardiac death, claims more than 350,000 lives each year, largely because patients don't get emergency treatment in time. Soon, passengers who suffer a heart attack on some airline flights may get the quick help they need.
Unlike a heart attack in which blood flow to the heart muscle is temporarily blocked, the primary cause of sudden cardiac arrest is when the heart's normal electrical signals become erratic, causing the heart to cease pumping blood. When the heart stops beating, every minute is critical. If that happens on an airplane, the patient's chances of survival are limited.
Patients who have a sudden death event lose consciousness. Their best chance of survival is to be resuscitated promptly as opposed to receiving CPR while the airplane finds a nearby airport.
If you're in an airplane and you develop ventricular fibrillation and the action that's taken is to send the plane down to the nearest healthcare facility for defibrillation, it is highly unlikely that you would have defibrillation in anything less than 15 to 20 minutes.
That need for emergency treatment is why American Airlines has announced plans to add portable defibrillators to its overseas flights, about 270 of them, beginning next year. The devices, approved recently by the FDA, weigh only 4 pounds and are user-friendly, so that flight personnel can easily use them in case of an onboard emergency.
Analyzing heart rhythm. Do not touch the patient.
The device automatically begins to analyze the patient's heart rhythm, and that takes about 4.5 seconds.
Shock advised. Charging. Stay clear of patient.
This patient...
Deliver shock now. Press the orange button now.
This patient is in a shockable rhythm. They require a shock immediately.
Shock delivered.
The shock is delivered.
Manufacturers say the device won't shock a patient unless it's needed, so there is no injury to a patient if they're incorrectly suspected of having cardiac arrest.
There may be mistakes made, but overall I think more lives will be...
Investigating Democratic campaign abuses is now accused of shaking down a lobbyist. And one of the dangers of flying. What can be done to make it better?
On board, but the FAA...
The spectacular crashes that dominate the headlines, but the thousands of cases every year where people become seriously ill on flights. Today, a new report out of the American College of Cardiology says that only a few planes are equipped to handle a medical crisis. The rest must make emergency landings, hundreds of them every year, which may not get people to the hospital in time. Here's Dr. Tim Johnson.
Apply pads. Plug-in connector.
American Airlines is the first U.S. carrier to begin training its flight attendants in the use of defibrillators. Defibrillators are portable machines which electrically jump-start the heart when it develops a dangerous rhythm known as fibrillation.
Deliver shock now. Press the orange button now. Shock delivered.
It's simple to use. It's effective. If I never use it, great. But if I have that with me for one opportunity to save one life, it'll be worth it.
So far, none of the other U.S. airlines has announced plans to follow American's lead, though they all say they are studying it. While no one keeps accurate records, experts have estimated that several hundred people a year die on airplanes because of medical emergencies. When the emergency is caused by heart fibrillation, this easy-to-use and safe device that costs as little as $3,000 could quickly save a life. Qantas Airlines is one of only 3 international airlines who do carry defibrillators, which they have used numerous times. Winnie McCown was revived 2 years ago on a Qantas flight when senior flight attendant Peter Engler used a defibrillator.
I've seen them work, and shouldn't be without one.
In your mind, there's no doubt they're worth it.
Oh, most definitely. What's the price of a human life?
Dr. Eric Donaldson is the medical director of Qantas. He says the U.S. policy of diverting planes to the nearest airport during a heart emergency simply doesn't work.
It takes 20 minutes at least from cruise altitude to get your aircraft on the ground. That's
minimum.
That's minimum.
And the chances of someone surviving heart fibrillation after 20 minutes are virtually zero. Dr. Timothy Johnson, ABC News, Anaheim.
There is a development tonight in the murder case of Jean-Benet Ramsey. ABC News has learned that handwriting experts at the
machine on its planes. Here's NBC's Andrea McCarran.
Basic training for stewardesses is meant to turn a girl into a woman. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. Stewardesses, like jetliners, must be slinky sex symbols.
Deliver shock now. Shock delivered.
It has been a remarkable journey from the stewardesses of the 50s and 60s to the present-day flight attendants.
Deliver shock now. Analyzing heart rhythm.
1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5. Breathe.
You know, when they first started hiring flight attendants or stewardesses then, they were nurses. We have a pulse. It's almost like we're going back to nurses again, except that we don't have the degrees in it. Technology's wonderful.
Veteran flight attendant Judy Till is training her colleagues how to use a new technology, a potentially life-saving device called the automatic external defibrillator, the AED.
Someone comes up to our service area where we are, clutching their chest, grabbing for their pills at the same time, gasping for breath. It's scary.
The AED provides a computer-generated voice that explains just what to do if a passenger goes into cardiac arrest.
Shock advised.
It can provide an electric shock that helps the heart restore its normal rhythm. But unless it's administered within the first 8 minutes, doctors say a patient's chances of survival fall dramatically.
If a person has one of these events on board a plane and a defibrillator is not available, it's very likely that they will die.
Carolyn McDowell knows that all too well.
It was the saddest day of my life. John was my best friend.
A month after celebrating their 17th wedding anniversary and headed to a family reunion in the Bahamas, John McDowell had a heart attack.
He had tears streaming down the sides of his face. It was a desperate moment, desperate time for us.
Desperate, despite the fact that a fellow passenger, a doctor who was a heart specialist, came to his aid and administered CPR for 45 minutes until the plane landed. McDowell believes had there been a defibrillator on board, her husband might still be alive.
People need to feel that they can board a plane, and if they have a medical emergency, everything will be done. In my husband's case, that just wasn't true.
In fact, experts say, when a plane is flying at 30,000 feet, it is virtually impossible to land in time, whether it's over water or even over land.
Every patient who flies on an aircraft needs to recognize that the chance of dying during a cardiac arrest in their seat is twice as likely as their chance of dying in a fiery plane crash.
Each defibrillator costs about $3,000 and is roughly the size of a laptop computer. American Airlines is the first U.S. carrier to put them on its aircraft, but so far, only the 240 planes American flies over water are equipped. Qantas and Virgin Atlantic are among the foreign carriers that say they've been using them successfully for more than 6 years to provide life-saving shocks or simply to monitor a patient.
Charging.
A growing coalition of doctors, airline passengers, and politicians is pushing the Federal Aviation Administration to make the defibrillator a required component in all in-flight medical kits. which are now little more than bandages, a stethoscope, and medicine for allergic reactions.
We saved another one. American Airlines officials say, depending on how well their test program goes, they may put defibrillators on all of their planes. In the meantime, other U.S. carriers are watching closely to see if Americans' investment flies. For Today, Andrea McCarran, NBC News, Washington.
It's estimated that defibrillators would raise the cost of an airline ticket by less than a penny.